Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are having another conversation surrounding creativity, especially design this time. And the last ones that I've done, you guys really liked it and have been pretty much scolding me and blackmailing me to make few more. So here I am after a couple of months doing one more with the amazing Raag, who is the founder of Made by Anomaly, and amazing work that he has done. I have specifically just chosen three projects with him to talk about, and the rest would be about how he networks, how he get clients, and how he got into all of this. So, welcome, Rag. Welcome
Thank you
on this
so much.
channel, and welcome to this podcast.
Thank you so much. And thanks a lot for that introduction. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of bullied him to make a cup of chai or a cup of tea so that it's much more enjoyable
Okay.
experience for both of us. So, cheers on that. It looks really good.
Thanks. That's third wave actually I got for a gift. Yeah. Um, but it's Wagh
Oh,
Bakri inside a
interesting.
third wave cup. Yes, it's Wagh Bakri chai inside a third wave cup. Yeah.
Hey, nice. Oh man,
Uh,
I already had like 2 cups of my coffee, so I'm trying not to get another caffeine in. And I want to make myself feel better, so green tea it is today.
makes
But
sense. Makes
yeah, would
sense.
you like to introduce yourself and what you do? And also, what is Made by Anomaly? A little bit of background of yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot again for that introduction and for having me on here, Maitreyee. My name's Raag. I run an animation and illustration studio, Anomaly, and our website's maitreyee.kal. That's where Made by Anomaly kind of came out from. So over the past 9 years, basically, we've had the chance to work with some amazing clients like Amazon, Disney Plus, BBDO, Wieden+Kennedy, and most recently Qatar Airways. And what we help them do is create illustrated and animated content to help elevate their digital marketing experiences. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. Like I said, it's been 9 years. So I started just by myself, and we kind of slowly over the years kind of grew our team, both our full time team and a team of freelancers that we often collaborate with. And I personally handle the creative direction and the production pipeline for every project that we do here at Anomaly. And then I occasionally step in as an animator still when I feel like I'm really missing out on playing around with After Effects or Illustrator. And yeah, so our team currently we're working with a team of five, and then we have a team of 15 plus freelancers, kind of all over the world, Eastern Europe, Brazil, India, who we rely on. And yeah, that's basically how I've been working over the past few years.
9 years. Wow, I would love to know a lot about what you have been doing for 9 years, and definitely working with such big clients, you're doing something right for sure. So, I would like to start with one question that I usually ask everybody, mostly everybody, is like, how did you get into design or this creative field that we see you today?
It was kind of a funny story, actually. So until my eighth grade, I just wanted to do what my best friend wanted to do, and he wanted to become an automobile engineer. And so I was like, done. And our filter to become an automobile engineer, like our aptitude test for it was, can we recognize every car that's out on the street? Like if you can recognize the make and the model of every car, that's like a huge tick on your resume, being like, yep, you can become, you can totally become that. And somewhere, when I was in my eighth grade, my brother, my elder brother, he just comes up to me and very respectfully, he's like, "Yes, like automobile engineering sounds very interesting, but science and mathematics, they don't look like those are your like strong suits." And he was totally right about that. He's like, you have to go through all of that to become one. And so, but like you definitely have a creative. Like a creative side to yourself, so why not explore something like design or animation? And one of the very first articles I read about how animated films are made was about the movie Finding Nemo. And I found out how the animators working on Finding Nemo, because it was all based underwater and all of that, right? Now, if you want to animate those fishes or like life underwater, you really have to kind of experience that. So the animators were flown to Hawaii for scuba diving, where they could like experience it all, and they had huge ass aquariums installed in their studios. And so they really had to kind of get into the whole thing. And I'm like, this sounds great. Like free trips to Hawaii, scuba diving sounds amazing. And I was like, if my animation journey involves even a bit of this, sign me up for this. So that was the first story I read about how animation films are made. And I had no clue how difficult it actually is, because through that article, it was just, trips and a lot of fun. I was like, the work culture sounds great. The world is my oyster and blah, blah. Like, I could totally do this. And so that's how I kind of got into it. Also, I think it helped that my elder sister picked up graphic design. She's 2 years older than me. So then I could see, what graphic design is. And kind of can learn a little bit of that from her experience. And that kind of gave me a bit more confidence, being like, yeah, I think I could at least explore the field and see where it takes me. Because when you're supposed to decide, what college to go to and all of that, you're still 17, right? So you don't really know. So yeah, that's how actually I ended up getting into it. And yeah, the rest of it was just half winging it and half it was just luck in a way that I actually really was into the animation process, but just exploring the world of animation. There was 2D and there was 3D, and what I really liked about each pipelines, and looking at the works that other animators were putting out there as well kind of helped me define the kind of animator I would want to be personally. So yeah, that's essentially how the journey started, and there was a lot that came after it. But yeah.
Damn, I think it was very opposite to me. I think we all, like you said, we got into Pixar or Disney. We saw all of that, growing up. And for me as well, I got into this industry because I thought that whole animation industry was super cool, right? And how they used to get real deers in the studio for Bambi and all of that, just to understand the
Right.
anatomy and everything. But as
Yeah.
I started to read about it, as I started to know more about how animation is actually made, it was very, very logical for me. It was very, very more software-y than like creative-ish, I think. Like, oh damn, I have to make so many like cells, or I have to maybe animate like single point or like single arm.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh damn, I don't think I would like that in long term. But I found out that I still loved drawing, so I think that's how I got into illustration. And then I just started to hire people who are really good at animation than me for animating
Right.
those. So,
Yeah.
see, like things can take you completely opposite even if you like the same thing. I think Disney, Pixar, Ghibli Studios, all of this are such a big inspiration for maybe 90s or 2000s kids, especially getting into creative business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, around that time, there weren't. It seems like animation was just picking up around, let's say, 2010, which is when I had gone to college for it and everything. So there were, like, especially in India, for the listeners who aren't sure about the institutes in India, there were smaller institutes like Arena or MAC. These were much smaller institutes that would offer like diploma courses or like 6-month courses, and you could directly get into like an outsourcing hub like Disney, or there was a Prana Studios, and there were a bunch of them, and a lot of them were opening in Bangalore or Bombay. And so it was just like the whole chatter was how it's a booming industry and this and that. Like, we didn't have to worry about jobs as such. And so I was like, okay, on that front, I think we're covered. But also on the inspiration side, in terms of like, would I really enjoy doing it? I found out later how those Disney movies are actually made. So what you were just talking about, right? Like, especially the older ones, like The Lion King or Snow White, where they actually made each and every frame by hand. Like, and 1 second of animation is 24, 25 frames. And so, and those movies were like an hour long, more 1.5 hours long, or something like that. And I was like, so I couldn't even do the math, and I found that out much later. So I was like, okay, so it's not as easy as just taking a trip to Hawaii and going back on your softwares and just there's a magic button and everything just comes together. Like, it's really hard work, if depending on the kind of animation you're doing. So I found that out later, and I was like, okay, too late now. I've already chosen to take this challenge up, so can't really back out of it. But yeah, it was fun. Even the projects we worked on at the college were fun, and then it just so happened that soon after it, I started getting some freelance projects on the side, and one thing led to another. So kind of found my strong suit here and there. And just carried on. Yeah.
So let's move on to the projects that you guys have done. Because now we are talking about animation, I think I'll talk about one of the animation projects that I've seen the work that you guys have done, which is Giving What We Can. And you guys can definitely see all of these projects on their website, and they're really amazing. Go and check it out. I'll also have a lot of screenshots going on the screen while he's talking and explaining the project. So because we're talking about animation, let's talk about it first. It's an amazing project. The layouts, the colors, the cohesiveness that is going on, it is so beautiful. Illustration is amazing. Can you maybe start with how you got the project, or because I also see you guys have a lot of sketches, a lot of BTS kind of things going on as well. Really well explained as well. So I would love to know how you got the project and how the concept came about. Or before that, maybe can you give a little brief about what the project is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Giving What We Can, here's the brief, right? So Giving What We Can is basically a non-profit organization based in the UK. And their mission is basically to convince all of us to donate up to 10% of our yearly income to a cause that matters to us. Now, the issue that they're addressing is whenever we think of donating to a cause, we often, or at least I often struggle to look for, first of all, the cause that matters to me, but also once I find that, to look for an organization that I really believe in or I trust, with the money that I'm going to donate. Now, and I'm looking for transparency. In some cases, I do want to kind of feel like I'm making a difference with, however or how much ever I'm donating, basically. And here, you could donate your time to an organization, actually go volunteer, or you could donate your money, and you would still want to see that money kind of go to or to directly affect someone. And in this case, because in this case, they're very much on the money side, like they're just encouraging people to donate. Basically put in the money. And so the organization makes it much easier, like they to kind of vet these organizations, Giving What We Can makes it much easier to vet these organizations. And they kind of give you a short list being like, these are the organizations that work with us. And like, you can just filter through in a way, the cause that matters, and just kind of trust that. So the cause was super important for us. By the time we got the project, we'd worked with a lot of for-profit tech organizations, which is good for business for sure, but it didn't come with a huge sense of purpose. It was very much, marketing led, and it was purely to advertise a digital product, which was for profit. That was the brief that the project came with. And how the whole thing happened was, it's going to sound like, almost unrealistic, because we had a client that we were consulting for over the past year until we got to Giving What We Can. They are based in the Netherlands, and they had only hired us for our creative direction capabilities. So they were an animation studio as well. It's just that they had decent animators, but they just didn't have creative directors to direct those animators, or good designers to kind of let the animators know, what good colors are, what good compositions are, and so on. So we had already been working very closely with this client in the Netherlands over the past year. And finally, the client one day just randomly comes up to us because he'd seen us suggest how, we just need, at times a project just needs a bit more time, or we can't rush a project. And for almost all of those projects that we had worked on for them, it was very templated. They only had about 4 to 5 weeks for every project, and that's what they would promise every client. And for them, that was their strength. Like, give us any brief and we'll nail it down into within 4 to 5 weeks. And in my opinion, it doesn't work that way. Like, every project is very different from each other, and we like to kind of evaluate every project depending on the requirement, audience, the style we want to explore, the people we're working with, all of that. And I already suggested that to him, being like that. I mean, it's not exactly our style, but we're kind of just putting up with that approach. And so one day he just comes to us and he's like, cool, so you keep talking about this. So, if I was to give you, the budget for a dream project, so you quote the budget, you get your team. It could be anyone. Like, you get in touch with any freelancers you want to work with, bring on board any full-time folks you want to work with. We'll give you the budget. Even the timeline is yours. So, if you say that it's going to take 3 months, we'll give you those 3 months. So it was an open brief for us, which we were really, really lucky to have. Like, what client just comes to you and is like, just ask for whatever and we'll give it to you. But because they were just very curious, they're like, you keep asking for all of these things. I just want to see what you can actually do with, once you have, once all of these factors are in place. So we asked for all of that. We were able to get a huge team together for this one. There were animators working from Eastern Europe on this one. There were illustrators working from Poland and here in India, including illustrators from our full-time team. I was directing the project and played a small role in the animation as well. And the music was also custom music that we had gotten composed from another person in the US. So like, all of this kind of just came together for this project. And yeah, that's how we kicked things off essentially. So yeah, of course, then one thing led to another, and we worked very closely with the client to make sure that, the script was in place, and so on. And that just, the project just went on from there. But the other thing that I would love to mention is the client was also in a very interesting place here because they were going through a rebrand. So the website was under development. At one point, they were like, we aren't even sure of the colors yet. So we had to pause until the client could decide, at least the colors or the typography that they could move forward with. But besides that, we didn't have anything. Like, they didn't have a solid set of brand guidelines in place as such. So we were like, that sounds okay, because we could still overlap things. Like, while we are storyboarding, it's sketches, right? It's visualizing how every shot works. We don't think of colors as much while we are storyboarding. So we could at least start that phase while you work on, your brand guidelines. And we kind of overlap those steps, and we're hoping for them to just get back to us at the perfect time. And they did. So yeah, but yeah, that was a bit about the client and our process and how the whole project just came about. Yeah.
That sounds nice. I mean, that freedom is really important. And I've had very few clients like that who just come to you and be like, you know what, go crazy. We might give you a couple of just feedbacks here and there, but I think it's completely up to you. While you were talking about the colors, I was just going to ask you the same thing on how you came about, the color palette for all of this. But I would also like to now know about how you usually brainstorm your illustration style, right? Because I have a very different illustration style, and sometimes clients require a very specific illustration style. Because my illustrations can go very crazy and very chaotic. It can have 2D and 3D elements together. It can go very colorful. But whenever I've worked with clients who are much more neutral, or they want very specific brand colors into their illustrations, specifically when I've worked with UCLA, I've been working with them for over 3-4 years now. So they like their illustrations very anatomical, and their specific UCLA colors coming in. So when all of that comes in, it's a bit tricky for an illustrator who can go really colorful and can go crazy with the illustration style to go very neutral and have, kind of set yourself in the box, which I understand that's our job. We kind of customize illustrations for them. But I would love to know how your creative thinking goes into customizing those illustration styles specifically for a client, or maybe how you did that for, getting this as an example of this project that we are talking about.
I think with every project, especially at the beginning of a project, while we are storyboarding, or even actually before that, when we are even discussing the creative brief, um, besides just sharing references with the client, there's a lot of educating the client that comes into play, because we really need to understand that the client doesn't come from a design or an animation background, unless we are dealing with an ad agency and there's a design team out there, and which often isn't the case with us. And so when I say education, they really need to, like, they might not be able to make out the difference between illustration A, B, or C unless we really point out the details to them. They'd be like, all of these things look the same to us. So, like, exactly what are you talking about? Versus, because we've gone through the education and we've gone through years of working in the field, we might be able to dissect things a lot more. So the more I think we communicate with the client early on, being like, this is, these are the three styles, and this is how we are defining the styles overall. That really helps the client understand or wrap their heads around, okay, what can we relate to the most. So we kind of start there with those conversations, and then comes the brand guidelines, which kind of defines a lot of the illustration. I wouldn't say style, but like the color boards are kind of defined or dictated by the brand guidelines, usually of the client. Now, we do work with a lot of startups who do not have solid brand guidelines, or they do, but our designers don't really agree with the kind of colors that they've chosen, because especially as a startup, they just want to get to the minimum viable product, right? So they'll just quickly pick colors that work for their product, which might be a mobile app or a web app if we are talking about a digital product. But in a different context, when you apply those colors to characters or environments in an animation, it just won't work. So there are those discussions to have with the client, being like, hey, nothing against the choices that you've made, but can we introduce a tertiary color here, or can we introduce a third or a fourth shade, if not a different color, to kind of balance things out overall? And we start there, basically. Going back to the illustration style, the other thing that also matters, especially when we are talking about animation, is if you're dealing with elaborate environments and characters, like we did with Giving What We Can, it was very important for us to also show them different sets of characters, and how wildly abstract we can go with the characters, and how realistic we can go with the characters as well. So half of that is a stylistic choice to make, or like a stylistic preference, and the other half is the tools that we use also kind of let us know what's possible and what's not. Not primarily, we don't start there, but let's say we're working with Illustrator and After Effects for the softwares that we use for most of our animations. Now, the plugins that we use to rig our characters, the characters just have to follow a set or a set of parameters for us to be able to animate them effectively, versus if you are doing a frame by frame cell animation, where you're drawing each and every frame by hand, where you have all the liberty in the world, but that also takes longer and costs a lot more. And so we discuss all of these with the client, essentially. And so it's like part production process, part stylistic preferences that kind of come together and help us decide, okay, that's the route that we should take. That's still very early on in the process. And we just make sure that the client is always educated about the direction we're taking, right? So then we move on to storyboarding, where we kind of keep these things aside. We just want to focus on camera angles and composition and how we go from one shot to the other. But the moment we move on from storyboarding and get into illustrations again, we really want to make sure that we go back to those decisions that we made. We make 2 to 3 style frames, which are like screenshots of the final video that we are envisioning, and share that with the client, being like, hey, so until now we were just discussing references. Now here are 3 frames specifically to the script and specifically from the storyboard. And this is how we're translating those references specifically in your context. And so that is when things start to come together for the client. And that's when they come back to us being like, oh, so this is like, they either love it or they don't. And they can come back to us being like, oh, we didn't visualize so and so being translated this way. So can we talk more about that, or can we change this and that? So it's a constant, like with constant iterations, we kind of get there in our process. Or I think in any good animation studio, like the process that they would follow is these frequent check-ins, and not like, day one, everything's decided and they directly come back to you with the final video. So yeah, I think, the more milestones we have, the more check-ins we have with our clients, the better. And it's not like those are every day. We just make sure with our team in-house, we are also working closely with our illustrators and storyboarding artists to kind of make sure, they get to experiment quite a bit. So it's also a thin line between how much we are defining at an early stage, because that could be very limiting for our illustrators, and also then how much do they get to explore.
Are there any resources that you guys use doing all of this? Because when we are doing any animation, because we don't do much like you guys do, but whenever we are doing any animation or in general any project, there are a couple of, let's say, softwares or apps that we use to maybe brainstorm or mood board. Because we are very creative people and we go through a lot of apps, I think this is something that we kind of are aware of. Like some apps, work for us while we are brainstorming.
Yeah.
But I think clients are pretty simple when it comes to it. So I have gone through so many. And for my clients, most of them, they absolutely love making boards on Pinterest and just start putting in references. So, it kind of helps us to come to the same page visually before even we start sketching or like storyboarding for them. And go from Pinterest to Millenote for just a board, creating styles and all of that. Do you have any such process?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, before I get to the tools, I do want to mention one thing which helped us big time. So, let's say in the first year of freelancing, when I just started off independently as an animator, I was just used to looking at the brand or looking at the brand that a client comes to us with. And directly going to other animations that I'd love to, or other illustrations or animations that I'd love to like take inspiration from, basically. I'd start there, but over the years we've realized that it's actually very effective to completely disconnect from the animation or illustration realm itself and look for look for inspiration elsewhere. So what I mean by that is we'd look at ceramics and the way ceramic vases are painted. We'd look at different fabrics, or we'd look at inspiration everywhere outside of the digital realm, or especially outside the animation or illustration realm. That really helps us define the language or the creative direction for a project. We have a repository of these random inspirational images that we just keep. And we always kind of go in there and be like, is there anything from this folder that we can pick for a client, right? Pinterest is huge for us. But the other thing that we've also noticed with Pinterest, especially, we never involve the clients on that side. It's always internal for us. But even there, after a few hours, it becomes too muddled because everyone starts adding their references to the same board, which is good. Like, you do want to go broad and jump into the whole discover phase when you're at the start of the project. But it's really important for us to then pause and be like, okay, now let's start defining, please, because we have like 100 references here, and it's not a direction, right? It's just a board. It's good to inspire, but now let's start shortlisting and figure out, maybe we have a different board for colors, maybe we have a different board for patterns, if patterns or motifs play a huge role in a video. So tools wise, Pinterest is a big one for us. Besides that, we do go on websites like Behance for inspiration as well. But again, if you're going on Behance, we aren't looking for animations and illustrations. We're looking for everything else. Like, we also look at a lot of photography projects. We look at a lot of architecture projects to see if there's anything we can get from those realms and introduce that in our project somehow. That honestly would be something, while you look at our videos, it'll be something that you might not be able to clearly recognize, being like, oh, this is exactly where they took it from. But even if it's like a small idea that pops up, or it could be one little thing in the background that came up, that it's done its job. So we do that as well. And my filter is that, if I can kind of collate all of that on a Google slide that clearly defines a direction for my illustrators, and they aren't left confused at the end of that discussion, then I've done my job well. If they seem confused, or they're still like, we're not sure, or it just seems too open, then we go back and we're like, okay, what do we need to kind of cut down and define here? So the last output of this thing is always a slide that kind of sums it up like a mood board, with like less than 10 references that really just defines a very clear direction for our team. Yeah.
Well, that sounds really interesting. I think even this is a new process for me as well. The people that I've worked with, the agency that I've worked with, they have a very similar process to what I usually do. So this is like an eye-opening thing for me. So yeah, thank you for sharing that process. Speaking of styles, speaking of illustration styles, I would love to know about the project that you did, which made me follow you guys, and that's how I found you and Made by Anomaly Instagram page, which is the 36 days of type that you guys did last year, which was really amazing. That style is very different. I was really impressed. So I'll start pasting the ABCDs that they have done, not all of them, so you guys can go and check it out. But it is such an amazing project that they have done. So can you just give us a little brief on how you came to creating those cocktails with recipes, and showing these illustrations and showing it through photographs with some motifs and elements here and there? How did you guys come up with that concept?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot again for for that. I actually couldn't recall that's how we ended up, getting in touch and starting our conversation. But I'm glad we did. So going back to 36 days of type, he started planning that a month, about 6 weeks before it starts, sometime last year. And we had some time on our hands outside of client projects, and I was like, let's plan this in advance, because we also needed a concept that was scalable. I didn't want us to work with a concept where every day we kind of have to, or our illustrators have the pressure to come up with a newer idea, which to some extent they always do, because that's the challenge in a way. But yeah, overall, I still wanted to make it simpler for them, where that process shouldn't take hours, essentially. Because parallelly we still were working on client projects and all of that, so I didn't want them to take that load. But the whole project started with another one that we were working on, which was called Move On. It's on our website as well, actually, and that project had to do with a lot of cutouts and like live action images that we'd worked on, which at that point of time was fairly different from the 2D animations that you see in the rest of our portfolio. But that was a huge experiment for us. It was super fun for us to work with those cutouts, for us to work with the live action imagery, and kind of make that style out of it. So after having a lot of fun with that one, we kind of wanted to continue experimenting with the same style. And it just so happened that when we were thinking of a concept for 36 days, I had this coffee table book for, they were basically a bunch of cocktail recipe cards. Yeah, I was just quickly browsing through that because it was right in front of me. And that kind of hit me, it kind of hit me then and there, being like, this is scalable enough. I think the fact that these are recipes themselves make it easier for our illustrators to then not think of the content as such, but just focus on the stylistic preferences in that case. Team members at that point of time were also really into mixology, so it was really fun for them to shortlist cocktails. And also we tried reaching out to bartenders, being like, hey, do you want to do this together, and we'll just kind of feature one of your cocktails in there. And we were able to do that with one or two of them. And then on the other side, with these independent projects, what I really like doing at Anomaly is to kind of let go of a bit of the creative direction role and just have the illustrators lead it. Because they don't always get that opportunity on client projects. And the independent projects that we work on is a huge opportunity for them to step up and take like a larger role. I approached our lead illustrator Saloni, who worked on most of these, actually all of these illustrations. And I was like, you decide the colors, you decide, the kind of look that you want for this thing, you decide the composition. I'll only be stepping in to nudge you a little if it feels completely off. If it doesn't, if it feels like it's just a preference and you have one and I have another, then we won't touch it. Then we'll go with your preference. And so she enjoyed that liberty as well, because it's not always that she gets to play around with that or play a larger role in a project like that one. And so, that was a bit more about how we started with it. And but yeah, the emphasis on exchanging roles like that is a big one for us when we work on projects like these. Yeah.
No, definitely. Can I ask you a difficult question right now?
Yeah, go for it.
If you had to choose one letter that you absolutely loved in this project, which one would you go for?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to pull that up on our Instagram. But you could say I'm biased maybe, but the R looks amazing. Personally, I love a good espresso martini, so I love the E as well. That one was my personal pick. So when every one of our team members was choosing like their favorite cocktails, like the espresso martini was the one that I picked.
The recent one, the last project that I really wanted to talk to you about is the Scroll Tales one that you have done.
Yeah.
Oh man, it is so cute. And it is so creative. And you guys are still
Thank you
looking
so
for a lot
much.
of collaborators for this, right?
We are, yes, we are, absolutely. We are specifically looking for writers and illustrators for Scroll Tales.
Guys, you guys have to go and check out scrolltales.com.
Uh, Thanks a lot for bringing that up, actually. So, a bit more about the project, so people get why we're looking for writers and illustrators. Scroll Tales is basically it's meant to be a digital library for children's ebooks that follow more politically correct and empathy-driven narratives. And so, in a nutshell, that's what it is. You can go on scrolltales.com right now, and the website opens up to the very first story that we just launched a few weeks ago. It's called The Creative Crew. And that particular story tackles gender stereotypes and professions, and just kind of lets children know that there is no one profession that's tied to one gender, and they could just like go crazy, and they really can visualize themselves doing any of these things. And that's the first one. And that's essentially what Scroll Tales is. More about that on our website. But how it kind of came to be was last year around August. I spent 5 months in Toronto last year, and one of the weekends I was just browsing through bookstores there. For some reason, I ended up in the children's section of every bookstore, and it was really interesting to see how the children's books there tackle all these issues. So it could be, or they were just a lot more politically correct, and had a huge sense of purpose behind them. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So it could be a story as simple as a day in the life of Charlie, right? Like there's nothing much to the story as such, but Charlie has same-sex parents. And so when a child is reading a story and, they notice these things in the illustrations, in the text, and they then go ahead and read 5 more of them, it's just a very normal thing for them to accept. And it's not something that they need to wrap their heads around at all. Right. And this was just one of the examples. The other examples I remember a book called Intersection Allies that would touch upon bisexuality, and that would kind of understanding the concept around bisexuality for children, but not just that. To be fair to the writer and to the authors of the book, it was touching upon a lot of different things. It wasn't just that; it's just one of the themes that really popped out to me. And I was like, here, it was just sad to see children here in India, and maybe I'm generalizing unfairly here, but the children that I've come across personally, at restaurants or or through my friends, like their nieces and nephews, and they're just on their iPads watching Motu Patlu or something, or a little Singham, which I'm like, why? There's nothing to learn from any of these series. I'm sorry. So I don't have anything against some content being just for entertainment purpose. You still need that, sure, but it feels like the market is just saturated with that here. There still are some publications. I've heard about one called Pratham Books very recently. Who have books on similar topics, but yeah, anyway, so that was a problem that we identified. On the other side, I was also speaking to my lead illustrator Saloni. At Anomaly, we really want to make sure that every few months we check in with everyone we work with and make sure that their portfolios are heading in a good direction, that they're enjoying the work that they're doing. And I was having that same discussion with Saloni, and Saloni mentioned that she'd love to explore the world of children's illustrations. And so these two things kind of came together. So I'm like, okay, I need to give up an opportunity to Saloni to kind of go explore that. We see this gap in the industry right now where I would love if a kid just opens up Scroll Tales instead of YouTube. And just goes through one of our books on there, and because hopefully there's like more takeaway through our books than anything else that they would watch. And so these two things kind of came together. That's how the idea of Scroll Tales came up. It was supposed to be a short film at first, actually, but with the client projects we had going on the side, we didn't have the time to animate the film. So we ended up getting a developer on board and making the website that you see right now. And at the moment, we are working on the next two stories. We don't know what the theme would be, but that's why we are looking for more writers. We're looking for more illustrators to collaborate with. Because children respond to different things. So it's like every story, we are hoping for every story to have a different style of illustration, a different style of writing. And also we need to accept that like our team, we aren't in the children's education space as such, right? So while we did talk to a lot of parents and educators while writing the first story, we couldn't really work super closely with them, and we'd love to. So eventually the way we see it is, you go on the Scrolltail website and there'll be a bunch of thumbnails that you could just pick a book and just start reading it, come back to it anytime you want. We're also hoping to introduce features like notes for parents, because often parents don't know what conversations to have with the child, even while going through the story. It's not as obvious. And so on every page, we are planning to introduce a feature where they could just like expandable notes for parents to be like, okay, on this page, you could possibly talk about so and so things with your child. Essentially, we're hoping that, the children are a lot better equipped to have empathy-driven social interactions. Which is something I think the world could really use right now. So instead of them learning it the hard way or never learning it later. Yeah.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think this is such a great initiative. And I would say this is like the ultimate passion project that I've seen so far. Something that actually also satisfies your fire of creativity, as well as, solve something that is that you see there is an issue out there. And yeah, I think you guys are also developing a lot of young minds because of this project. So the website looks really good. So guys, please go and check it out. And if you are really interested in writing stories, or at least just giving them contacts, or maybe just illustrating something for them, go and contact them, connect with them. Is there a specific way that they can connect with you? Is there an email or something?
Actually, we respond much faster on Instagram than we do on email when it comes to collaborations. So our Instagram, you can add the handle there, but our Instagram is made by dot Anomaly. Um, and so yeah, they could directly send us a message on Instagram. Definitely, just make sure you include your portfolio in there. Because yeah, we'd love someone who already has some work, if not in the children's illustration space, just in the illustration space if you're an illustrator. And if you're a writer, just send us a few examples of what you've written, and we'll definitely make sure we respond. Yeah.
I think we've gone through all the three projects that I was really looking forward to talking with you in detail, and you have really answered it really well. So thank you so much. And I have, I think, one last question for you. It would be about how you usually network when it comes to getting projects. Is there a difference that you have seen whenever you change strategies about networking? And I think when we met in Pune, you mentioned that a lot of your projects or a lot of people come to you via Behance. Am I right?
Right. Yeah, they discover our work mainly through Behance or directly our website. Yeah. So we've invested a bit in our SEO where it just shows up if I think someone's specifically looking for explainer videos, especially. Which was surprising to us as well. Like, it's not like we went out of our way to really invest money or our time in SEO specifically, but it just so happened that we made it easier for them to fill in a form or directly reach out to us on email. So yeah, these two sources have been the primary sources where we get our projects from, essentially.
Right. And have you ever reached out or maybe cold email any agencies? Because I see you guys have worked with a lot of amazing agencies out there. So have you ever reached out to the agencies directly with your work, and have you ever collaborated that way?
Yeah, so cold emails, to be honest, I don't know if we've tried them enough. I just don't like the idea of it because I receive a bunch of them. They could be other voiceover artists or music composers or animators. Actually, animators we definitely review, but they just feel the services that we receive these cold emails for just feel so disconnected. Where it just doesn't sit well with me personally. And I just assumed that it would be the same for the person if I was to write one. And so we've never tried much of cold emailing as such. It's very, or if we have, it's very contextual. We have to make sure that there is a mutual connect. Like if we have a mutual friend or if we have a mutual colleague, then it makes a lot more sense for us to then approach someone we don't know, to give that reference and being like, hey, we've worked with them before, because that's a very then it's not cold anymore, I would say. You're getting warmer when you mention someone you worked with together or that. So I at least need that connect or something about their work that jumps out to us. So there needs to be an overlap between the work that we do and the requirement that they have to some extent. But we haven't tried much of that. Like, going back to your question about how we network, for some reason, actually, we've just been fortunate enough where we haven't had to pitch or consciously go out there and network to go get new projects. It's either them finding our work on Behance or through our website, and we just take it from the very first email that we receive. The one thing that we do is once we get that first email or that first message, we make sure we respond to it the same day, within the next hour or two. And a lot of our clients who've been very happy with our work have come back to us. And when we look back at how we started working together, that's one thing that they always point out. They always point out that we really like the fact that we sent you a message, and within like a maximum of 3-4 hours we got a response back, and with like very specific answers to their questions. Or if they didn't ask any questions, we asked them a bunch of them. That helps us arrive at a cost and a timeline. And that really helps them move things forward. So our responses aren't as broad as, let's definitely work together. And we don't push them to hop on a call with us because we really want to respect their time. The thing I would really want to mention actually is my alumni network really helped me from my master's program. So I did my master's in Manchester back when I was 21 in something completely different. It was in service design, actually. This seemed like a very interesting course, and it really added a lot to my skill set because besides service design, the course really focused on soft skills that a person needs to be a better colleague to work with, when you need to share criticism or feedback, how to do that. We literally had psychologists or therapists come in and like give us lectures on how to have more effective conversations. After we graduated, everyone went on to, like, one went on to work for Red Bull, another went on to work for Meta, Google, Microsoft, like big companies like that. And everyone, I feel like, wants to be that person that they enter a company and they come with their network, right? So if a requirement comes in, I feel like they'd love to be that person being like, hey, you need an animation, I have a team. I trust them. I've worked with this guy for 6 months when I was doing my master's, and we'll just put you in touch with them, and then you take that call. And so that alumni network has really paid off over the years, and that's essentially why most of our clients are actually based in the West now. So yeah, that wasn't really the intention when I signed up for that master's program. That just helped us that way. But yeah, if I was to do another one, or if I was to suggest someone to take up a course, I would say look less at the course and more at the alumni network of that place, and see how effective that is. Because if you build good relations there, you're working with them for at least a year, or if it's a longer course in the US, then it's 2 years. You work really closely, and those relationships, they, like, the ones that you build and the friendships that you build, they last you a long time.
I agree. I don't think it's about the degree, it's about the work and the people, I think, when it comes to education, especially in the creative field. Well, thank you so much. I think I've taken a lot of your time. It's been an hour already. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to take that much time of yours, but thank you so much. And it's a Sunday, guys. It's a Sunday. He accepted to do it on a Sunday. So thank you so much. But
thank
yeah,
you
I think
for
we've
having
covered
me
a
on
lot
here.
of basic questions. I would love to have you again, like one day, and we can just talk through a lot of maybe things that people don't talk about, like contracts and stuff. And I've taken a lot of workshops when it comes to contracts and all those tedious admin stuff, or like managing times, managing clients, and all of that. But I would love to even talk to you about that the next time.
Absolutely. I think we need a lot more conversations around the business of design, especially here in India, because I think that's where, that's a huge difference between, I genuinely believe that's a huge difference between a freelancer who isn't doing as well or earning as well versus ones that are doing amazingly well. The ones who have like a great design and business balance end up, in my view, end up just doing really well in their careers and all of that. And I think we need a lot more conversations about that. So for sure, yeah.
I agree. It was nice talking to you and meeting you in Pune as well. So guys, if you want to reach out to me, I'm always available on Instagram. If you want to reach out to them, go ahead and text them on Instagram. As he said, I'll have all the handles and references and tools what he has mentioned below. And yeah, thank you so much. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Same here, absolutely.
Bye everyone.
See you.